here we go. It's P.M.P. It's another 3 points, another 3 goals. Celtic still top of the table. Usually a tricky place to go. The old Almond Vale, the spaghetti had. Call it what you will, but the boys got a lesson today in football. Even with 10 men, we were absolutely fine today. We are going to dissect it all, or talk about loads of other random stuff as we normally do on P.M.P. We usually focus on the game for about 5 minutes and then just kind of move on to whatever it is the vodka dictates that we end up talking about on the old P.M.P. as it were. Anyway, we will get stuck in. Sorry, there's no intro music. Those naughty boys at YouTube just you get bug my happiness, Terry, with copyright claims, you know. Brian gave us the tune. He's contacted these people, but they still just don't want to let us use the tune. So, you know, it's this, you know, it's like Neil Lennon in the lockdown season. It's bitterly disappointing. But what can you do, mate? What can you do? We will do all that good stuff and get stuck right in. As always, if you are watching live right now, give us a wee like, give us a share, slag my hair. Slag Terry's if you want. Not there's much wrong with it, but you can slag anyone's hair that you like. If you want to give us a wee subscribe right now, that'd be great. Please do hit the like button if you're in that live chat right now, because the passengers fill up the more times that like button is pressed. It gives us all that algorithm stuff, Terry, which is still a wee bit beyond me. I'm not one of those people who go onto like fucking Twitter and Facebook and go, oh, please subscribe to the channel for free. It's just really not my thing. So, but kind of at the start of the show, I've got to say all this shit. So, if you can do that, that'd be great. If you want to become a Bhoycie Bus member, it's $1.99 a month. It keeps the wheels on the road, especially in the face of these copyright bastards. You know, it keeps us going, keeps it breaking even, as it were, because there is a few subscription fees that we pay to do all this, and a lot of free time spent by all the contributors. If you want to do become a Bhoycie Bus member, then you'd be joining the likes of MM, like Jim Dolan, like Jim C, like Ali, like Stuart Miller, like San Fran Celtic, like Monty, like Pam, and loads of others. I'd be here all day going through them all. But anyway, that's all that out the road. Terry, it's 3 o'clock on a Saturday. Celtic's the champions of the league, the league leaders, and our work for the week is already done. We've now got 7 days. Focus on the next task at hand. Am I right in thinking this is Brendan's first competitive win at the Spaghetti Head as Celtic manager? I could be wrong.
I don't think he's had that many games there. And you could be right. You could be right on that. He was asked about it pre-match. I just can't remember whether it was he'd been there once or he'd been there twice. But I don't think he's had a positive result. And I mean, Celtic have won prior to today. Had won 7 out of the last 15. So that kind of ratio told you that we kind of had a 50-50 chance of getting the job done today. Thankfully, the game didn't play out like that. I thought we stamped our authority on it quite early. Concerns around the pitch and all that kind of thing. But I'm kind of past that. I think we know about these pitches. The modern day footballer spends a lot of time playing on this kind of surface. Maybe not one just as bad as that, but they do play on they train on artificial pitches and things. And I think we need to put that one to bed around these pitches. We've shown on different occasions that we're able to get the job done if we're right. And I thought we were right today. I thought we were up for it. I thought the attitude looked spot on from early on. Took a penalty to get us in front again, which is the second time in a week that we've gone ahead after the award of a spot kick. But I don't. Whereas last week I kind of felt I kind of took the penalty. I don't think that would have been the case today. I think we would have got a breakthrough, whether we got a penalty or didn't. But really, really good to get the 3 points. Good that it was a comfortable enough afternoon, even allowing for the fact that we went down to 10 men for the second time in 4 days. That probably was a bit of a leveler for a while, but we managed to overcome that. And you wouldn't really have known that we were a man down. And once we got the second goal at a really, really good time, because Livingston have probably had a good half-time break where the manager has said, we're 1-0 down here, but we've got the one-man advantage. Let's go out, let's get at them. And within 2 minutes, the results put to bed. Maida tried to arse it in, and then it fell for O'Reilly, who was where he has been quite a lot this season, in the right place at the right time. Once that one went in, Bhoycie, it was just a case then of enjoying the rest of the game. And I was happy today. It's the kind of performance that I think we wanted after Tuesday night. And I'm really, really hoping this is the catalyst now for us to start seeing the Celtic that we're expecting to see.
Absolutely. I mean, we've spent this week really focusing on off-field issues, which isn't always my forte to do that, but I think sometimes it has to be done, Terry. Right? I'm a football guy. Do you know what I mean? First and foremost, I like watching what's going on in the park and where the players are at, and where, you know, obviously in your daft wee mind where you think you could manage the team better, which we all do as fans, I suppose. I'm more comfortable talking about those aspects and what the manager's doing than talking about the bold and stuff, but sometimes you've got to focus your mind on it. Today, though, we can kind of park that, I think, and we can focus, if we are going to focus on anything off the field after we talk about the game in itself, we can look at the manager a wee bit more of a deep dive into just how good he is. I think that's important as well, you know, in the midst of sometimes a wave of negativity after a poor result and the reasons as to why. I think on the back of the result, you've got a bag of a good result, I should say. We should be looking to do the exact same and look at the reasons why we're achieving that. And I think we can certainly be bigging up Brendan Rodgers. Chris Kerr's definitely on my Facebook page. He's saying salmon and toast, red wine, and Livy's Celtic 3, Livy 0. May this day last. You're right, mate. I started as I meant to go and only found out last night I was off on Monday, Terry. Apparently it's a bank holiday over here. So 3 days off, mate. I started as I meant to go on. I had some wine left for last night, like a half bottle. I only drank like 2 glasses last night, 3 glasses. Something like that. I was in bed at a good time. So I woke up and I seen it there and I thought, I'm going to have breakfast with red wine. It was great. Great way to start the day. I recommend it for anyone. It set us up for the result, you could say. But let's get back to the football. Rio Tati wins the penalty, takes the penalty. Go just talk to me about who you thought. I mean, the penalty we know is a Stonewall, right? So we don't need to really deep dive into that too much. But in terms of who was going to take it, did you have a wee bit of confusion in your mind as to who would take it? If I'm honest, I thought I would just let Kyogo take them.
No, I thought it would have been Hitati. He did score one last season. He took one last season.
He took one last season, but would you not think though, with the goal scoring run that Kyogo's on, and to keep that momentum going to him, it's unusual that such a high goal scoring striker such as Kyogo has he ever taken a penalty for Celtic?
He did. He missed one.
Did he miss one
last season? Yeah.
Well, you could better remember than me. I can't remember.
Pretty certain. Somebody in the comments. I think he hit the post with one or wide or something. He definitely took one because I remember him looking really sheepish after missing it. No, he definitely missed one.
I can't remember that.
Anyway,
it was Hitati. So you weren't surprised Hitati took the penalty?
No, I thought it would have been Hitati. With Turnbull not being on the park. What a dreadful penalty, by the way. You know,
I know.
He's not connected with that well at all, and fortunately, it's gone in for us. But I fully expected the keeper to save that. There we go.
Yeah, it was against Kilmarnock apparently.
That set us off. He didn't strike it well at all. But once it goes into the net, it doesn't really matter, does it?
Yeah, how big a thing, Jink, is for Hitati hearing the fans all cheering his name again and singing an individual song for him and things like that. He sort of did a love heart sign as well to support. I think there's been a bit of disgruntlement with Hitati. I think there's been a bit of a half and half sort of thing where a lot of fans are obviously rightfully, and I'm on that side of it, where they go, he's getting eased back in right now. He's been injured, and him being subbed off, is it because Brendan doesn't fancy him or he doesn't fancy Brendan? As I think could be just a bit of a clickbait sort of theory to look at. I think he's just been eased back in, but it does feel there is a large percentage of the fan base. I'm not saying that largest, but a large percentage of the fan base that are of the mind that Hitati's maybe checked out, so to speak, and has maybe not been putting in his best performances when he has played very sporadically, obviously, this season, but including, I think they are that pre-season game right before. What was that again? James Forrest testimonial it was, where he was awful against proper opposition. And I just think sometimes we're looking too deep into it, and I think maybe a wee bit unfairly. I think there was a bit of an olive branch offered by Hitati with the love heart sign. It was good to get him back in the goal scoring sheet, and it was reciprocated. by the fans because they obviously were singing his name, and we really want that to be a very harmonious situation, Hatate and the Celtic support right now, because he is a top draw player. Yes, he didn't play well midweek, but again, I put that down to more coming back from the injury thing. I think the other, not conspiracy theories, but the other takes on it that he's checked out and stuff that I was reading on social media midweek, I think are really, really harsh on a guy that is coming back from injury and has been so effective for Celtic so far. I just hope that now, with that goal scored, the fans are singing his name, the mood music around Rio Hatate can change a wee bit, Terry. And we start, obviously, his performances will improve as a byproduct of just getting more minutes in the park, but they'll also improve a bit where you feel the love. Players like to feel the love these days, don't they?
I think he's probably a victim of his own really, really high standards that he's set since he came into the club. You know, he comes in as £1.5 million player with probably not a massive amount of expectation, but very, very quickly it became apparent that we had a proper player on our hands here. And he, there's probably been something that's been brewing during the summer in terms of possible move for various reasons. It hasn't come to fruition.
I think Brendan alluded to that, Terry, didn't he? I think he'd said midweek, he'd said something about it being a difficult summer for Rio or something like that. And you know what he's saying there. Brendan's very clever with his words. He's not going to say he had his head turned, but I think when he's saying it'd be quite a difficult summer for Rio, well, he wasn't injured during the summer. I think that was him alluding to the fact they had an agent in his fucking ear that's obviously fucking been trying to lead him up a different path. I think that's what Brendan was alluding to. So you're right.
There's been something there where potentially there was going to be a lucrative move for him. For whatever reason, it hasn't happened. He's then been injured. He's been in and out of the side. But Bhoycie, see this talk about player checking out and stuff. Do you remember Jota? So Jota came in the season he was on loan. He was excellent between then and then the Christmas, and then he had a bit of an injury. He came back into the team again, and it took him a few games to get up to speed. And people had already said, that's it, he's definitely not signing for us. The loan move isn't going to be made permanent. He's checked out, he's gone. And once he got up to speed again and was back in the team, everybody was won over again. And it's just, and everybody has the right to react whatever way they want. But I think football supporters now, they just read into every single thing into such a minute detail and try to work out what they think's going on and things like that. The guy's just getting back up to full fitness again. He wasn't brilliant the other night. He was better today, and I'd expect him to be even better the next day. Spot
on, mate. Spot on. It just shows you though how mountains can be grown out of molehills. You know what I mean? I think with the attack on, you're absolutely spot on. What are you drinking?
Rockshore.
What's Rockshore? What's that?
It's just a wee can of beer. You get over here, lovely, nice and light.
Never heard it, mate. Sounds fancy. Sounds like it's stupidly expensive for something that just does the same job as everything else.
No, it's just your bog standard. Yeah. 12 cans for 9 or 10 quid, something like that.
Fair enough.
One of expensive tastes. Here, I tell you, Hatate wasn't the only one that played better today. Greg Taylor had an excellent game, didn't he? I thought. I've been very critical of him, and rightly so. I do think, though, there have been signs over the last fortnight that possibly just coming out of his slumber, but I think also it's been very, very noticeable that he has been inverting a lot more. And I thought both fullbacks were inverting today. And in the second goal that we got, both fullbacks were involved, and they were well inside the pitch whenever they took possession. So I think there's probably been something very subtle there where Brendan's maybe tried to move away from that. It hasn't probably worked as well as he would have liked, and he subtly sort of allowed those players to get back to where they were in terms of comfort zone last season, just until the results pick up and the performances pick up, and then he can start to try and implement his own ways again. I think there's been a little bit of a change.
There's been a tweak.
Yeah, there's been a tweak.
I noticed it more with Taylor than I do Johnson. I know you're saying you thought Johnson was a bit. I didn't feel as much is what Greg Taylor has been the last 2 games. I think the last 3 games, I should say.
He was everywhere today. He was popping up all over the park.
Same though at Celtic Park last week. It was very similar. And I think it's been a noticeable, right, how the fuck am I getting the best out of this boy? What is it? He's like, I just like playing that inverted role that I've done the last 2 years. For fuck's sake, go and do it then, and I'll deal with the team. Then when the red card happens, I know I'm jumping ahead a wee bit, but when the red card occurs, in fact, not really. Let's just look at the red card. The red card, firstly, we'll talk about the actual decision from the referee. Spot on?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything else he can do. Actually, when I watched it in real time, I wasn't sure if he'd given the red card to Joe Hart or to the other player, because it looked as if Hart came off worse out of almost. But when you say it, it's obvious. I don't see. I mean, John Beaton was never going to pass up that opportunity to put us down to 10 men, was he? And I think it's the right decision. I don't think we can.
It was red. First red card of his career.
First red of his career, yeah.
That's surprising, isn't it?
I think if he stays in his line, I don't think the guy scores from there, to be honest. He's
Rushing
unlikely
to
to score, but as a goalkeeper, you're not thinking like that. You're thinking of stopping the shot from happening, as opposed to, is he likely to score if I don't go out to this? And then the other side of it is, if he doesn't come out and the guy does end up scoring, then we're going, why did Joe Hart not come out off his line? I suppose that the thing is, when he makes that decision to come, you want him to get there and you want him to get it, and he wasn't quick enough to do that. So no, obvious red. And then you're in the scenario where Scott Bain's coming on and will be our goalkeeper for the next league game away to Motherwell, I think it is.
Be interested to see if Scott Bain, if this really is a follow-on of Brendan season 3, where we were very efficient as a team. Still picking up results. Went on and won a treble in Brendan's 3rd season. Obviously, Lenny got us over the line with the last 2 trophies of that campaign. But the football at times, was dominant, but maybe not as, free-flowing, never boring, as Tony Haggerty would say. Do you know what I mean? I think it's interesting that Scott Bain came in midway through that season for a veteran goalkeeper who'd had a very, very, a career, I should say, that was massive. It would be amazing, and he had a brilliant CV, but just his time was up. I wonder if Scott Bain could end up being elevated to that number 1 jersey if he's more like Brendan. That's what I thought at the time when he came on. I thought, this is the type of opportunity he got last time. Then you watch him second half and some of his decision making. It's a guy who's not played a lot of football. It must be hard.
It must be hard to come in for.
I agree.
Two games a season and try to play your optimum. It must be very, very difficult.
So I kind of shifted my opinion on that by the time I seen those sort of bizarre decision making by Scott Bain. But anyway, yes, back to the.
Hart had made a good save, Bhoycie. Hart had made a very good save at 0-0.
He did. He did
after a mistake by Scales, and it was just disappointing, because I was kind of thinking, well, do you know what? I gave him a bit of abuse the other night for the goal that we conceded. He then made a good save. He had made good saves in some of the domestic games, and you're thinking, he could have a good game today, and he's out of it, and so he'll not play next week, and then you would assume he'll come back in again for the Lazio match. But next week, I would think next week could be a tougher game away to Motherwell. They've started very, very well under Kettlewell, and we'll begin in there with what's already a makeshift defence, and now not your first choice goalkeeper. So that could be a tricky one for us.
Yes, back to the red card. Greg Taylor then, I think if you remember, Brendan has a word with Cal Mac after the red card, and he sort of is doing, as we expected, Brendan, that in-game management that the judge always talks about on the show. And Mark's not wrong with this. This guy's in-game management, I think, is second to none. He is very, very clever at already having a plan B arranged for possible outcome this, possible outcome that. If we go behind, what we're going to do. If we lose a man, what we're going to do. And you can see there's a clear message he's given Callum McGregor, and he's saying this, and I think he's saying get the fullbacks wider again now, rather than them inverting the way they had been before. I think that's what he was saying. We're going to have to try and spread the play there. and coming a wee bit tight in the midfield. But it's just so clever. Like that, he's always got a plan. This isn't a man in doubt, Terry, who's reacting at the to the decision. He's planned for this sort of scenario to occur. He does a lot of that preparation. And Greg Taylor maybe wasn't as emphatic in the second half as he was in the first. But I think you're absolutely right to give him the mention that you do, because he thoroughly deserves it. And again, he shows the strength that sometimes it's horses for courses. I mean, you're playing at, Almond Vale. Maybe a sexy left back could have been signed, wouldn't have coped as well in that ground for the first time. And then Greg Taylor comes in. The problem we've got is Burnaby doesn't suit these games nor Champions League games. That's the biggest problem. That's not me being a prick. Like,
Burnaby doesn't suit any games to football.
That's the point I'm making. So when it's horses for courses and you've got a Greg Taylor who can come in, he'd maybe be ideal being rotated at times for games like this with someone of a better standing that could maybe handle Champions League games a different manner. That's the way I see it anyway. And that shows you why there is a value still to Greg Taylor being in the squad. It's not just, try and chase him out the door because he's not been in the best form. Today he did very well.
The manager post-match, Bhoycie, I don't know if he caught it because it was just before we came on.
No, I didn't.
He talked about it, and he's done this before. He talked about invoking the plan that we have for when we go down to 10 men. So he was asked about the red card. He was asked about the red card, and he said, "But we work on this. We have a plan for this scenario," and that plan then kicked in. And you've mentioned there about the fullbacks. The bit that I noticed is we almost then went, it certainly looked to me, we went to 2 up front with Maida coming in off the left, and it was more like him and Kyogo playing as two attackers as opposed to a front 3 with Maida, Kyogo and Forrest that started the game. So probably something we haven't touched on then, but a consequence of the red card was that Forrest was sacrificed after being a surprise inclusion, I would have thought, for many in the starting lineup.
What does that say about the winner?
Well, again, do we read into this that this is some kind of message from the manager around the players that have been brought in? He did actually.
Is it a horses for courses?
I caught his post match actually because I was driving home from a young lads match and I had Radio Scotland on and I was listening to the build up, and then I turned it off at kickoff because I wanted to get to the house and catch up. I was about 15 minutes behind up until half time, but he was asked about bringing Forrest in, and he just made reference to the fact that Yang and Palma were 2 new guys just in the door, and he said, "I know what I'm going to get from James Forrest," which by default then maybe he was saying he didn't know what he was going to get if he put one of those other 2 on. And he also was asked about, or he made a point of talking about the comment that he'd made around every manager would always like another 1 or 2. He actually brought that up. He proactively brought that up, and he said that people had tried to sensationalize his words, and he just wanted to make it totally clear that he was happy with the club's policy and the business that had been done during the summer, and that what he meant literally was every single manager would always like to have got another 1 or 2. He made a point of that, and I know we discussed it during the week there after the Feyenoord defeat and things like that, but I thought it was very poignant that he went back to that himself. James Forrest was a surprise inclusion for me. It's not one I expected. I thought Palma would get another go because Palma was thrown into the Feyenoord game off the back of 20 minutes the Saturday before, and I thought he looked a bit short of match sharpness. But I thought the way for him to get that would be to throw him in today again in a domestic game. So I was surprised.
Sometimes it's the wrong fixture, though, mate. This is the thing. This is where I go back to the horses for courses, Terry. Maybe. This is where I start thinking, Forrest has played on this pitch a million times. He knows the unpredictability of the bounce of the ball. He knows it's completely different. Palmer could end up looking a donkey for not that he's been one, he's just been caught hit. And I think there's a bit of protection maybe involved there that Brendan's done. I think the other atmosphere, the other opinion, or the other sort of form, try to get it right, the sort of broader sort of concept, I think, for the fans on social media, Terry, was, well, wait the now. Forrest back in, that's a negative decision. That means that the wingers aren't good enough that have been signed, blah, blah, blah. I just wonder if actually he's protecting the other two a wee bit and going, you just can't, like, you won't come out of there smelling like roses. James will take the hit if there's a bad result. He can take the hit. And I wonder if there's a bit of player protection there. Palmer, for me, midweek, you're right, he did look a bit rusty. I don't think he necessarily warranted a start this time around, but to give him a fair crack of the whip the next domestic game, 9 times out of 10, I think you're right, you probably just go with him again. Try and get him up to that speed that we're looking for. However, Livy away is a different box of tricks, and I think there's maybe just been a horses for courses attitude there. We get to Matt O'Reilly now, mate. Matt O'Reilly scores the follow-up. Maida nearly makes an arse of it, you could say. I mean, I don't know what he's trying to do. It's a brilliant ball for Kyogo in there. The vision for him at times. And I think, again, I touched on this a few weeks ago. I think Brendan's seen a hell of a lot more all-rounder Kyogo player than just a finisher and a poacher for his team. I think he's got a vision for what Kyogo's next few years are going to look like. And I think they will be with an assist tally that's higher than what he was maybe getting before. But his goal tally not being sacrificed for that either. And I think he'll be the number one pick, I think, for the team this season because, on a side note, I think is nowhere near challenging Kyogo for the first team jersey, if I'm honest. Matt O'Reilly scores, but not just with that. I felt Matt O'Reilly was the man of the match today. He pops up all over the park, mate, doing vital things. He breaks up play. He's making crucial blocks. Some of his little passes, there's a dink over at one point. I'm trying to think who it was to, but he did this beautiful weighty pass. I think Sutton described it as like a stunned pass. He's using the surface. He stunned it the way he's just dinked it through for a cutback. Then when he cuts it back to on the volley, it's this deft touch to the outside of the boot. The ball's mid-height. I just think under Rodgers, we kind of predicted it a wee bit, I think, on the bus. We thought that might be a Rodgers-type player. I think as it's so transpired, maybe Matt O'Reilly had, I don't know, for whatever reason, his fire had not been lit as much under Ange's second season round. And I think that's just the way I pick up these comments at the beginning. And then when we go into this season, it looks like he's taken on an extra responsibility in the team. And that's not just because he's putting the ball in the net. Look at how he's playing. I thought he was excellent against Feyenoord as well. I really did. I thought he played very well in that game. Breaking up play, being responsible, taking ownership of the position that he's been given, not hiding at any point in time, making mistakes along the way, the odd one, absolutely. But I felt he never hides, Matt O'Reilly, for me. He's actually been my favourite player so far this season, Terry.
I think the other night he did do the dirty things well and probably didn't get as much opportunity to get on the ball and do the things that we expect him to do. The word I would use, I like this word I've used for describing today, nonchalant. I like that word. He was nonchalant.
Nonchalant. Yes, mate, I love it.
Yeah. He played with confidence and arrogance, and if he can maintain the kind of displays that he's had for us so far this season, that it'll not just be Leeds United that are coming in for him at the last minute and deadline day for 10 million quid. I think we've got some good players within the squad, but I think his ceiling is potentially one of the higher ones. Can you imagine if there'll be teams out there plotting, thinking if we could just put him in there and we could put this player behind him and this player to do some of the other roles and just get this guy on the ball all the time. Hopefully it doesn't happen because I want him to stay. But he sometimes, if things don't come off for him, his sort of language style could be seen as lazy. But when things are coming off for him, and they were coming off for him today, he does look a class apart. And the thing that he's adding this season that he didn't have last season was the goals. And he's getting on the end of things. He's timing his runs perfectly. The ball just seems to fall to him now in the box, and it can sometimes appear lucky, but it's not. There's a skill involved, and if you remember Frank Lampard, the amount of goals he scored because he was just so good at timing when he made his run into the box, the ball just seemed to always come to him, and it's not luck, it's a skill to be in the right place at the right time, and he's getting the goals, getting the assists, and as you say, he is digging in. We weren't great the other night, but he put in a shift and done the dirty side of the game, as I say. And again, I hark back. I do this quite often. When he moved into that 6 role when McGregor was injured, he performed a function that I didn't expect that he would have been able to dictate the game from that deeper space. So I do think we've got a talent on our hands here. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to keep a hold of him, but I also think there's more gears for him to go through, and let's just hope that perhaps the players that they've brought in. So they've brought in the 2 young lads in midfield, Bernardo and Home. I probably felt that the one midfielder whose place was under threat the most from anybody new coming in would have been O'Reilly, because you don't expect McGregor to miss out, and we've already talked about Hatate and the standards that he set for himself since he came in. So if you were thinking one position in that midfield 3 was vulnerable, it probably was Matt O'Reilly's by default. And I think we're nearly in a position now where you're sort of saying, well, he's not getting dropped out anytime soon. So where does this young lad that we've signed from Portugal, who by all accounts is a very, very good player, when are we going to see that? How are we going to see that? Is there a conversation where the captain maybe is the one who might miss out? Is that as unthinkable now as it was 6 months ago, a year ago?
Well, I think the management of Callum McGregor's game time naturally takes you to a space where you look at the 70 game average that he's done, 65 to 70 game average he's done, Terry, over the last...
Unsustainable.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. I mean, he's 30 now. The next 5 years will be important for him to be playing in the most important games. But definitely, I don't see a way where we could be looking to play Calmac as much as what he has been right now. And therefore, that means you have to envisage a future without him in the team week in, week out. I think people struggle with that concept. Like, it's a dig at the captain, or it's a dig at whoever it is you seem to say that would get dropped these days. I think a lot of the time, people used to feel like when it was Kyogo Giacomax, it had to be a versus as opposed to a, no, that game suits that player. That player's played X amount of minutes. Maybe he could be doing with a rest. It's all about getting the balance right with these guys. It's squad management. It's absolutely not going to be a case where we can constantly just rely on the same guys twice a week. Then they've got their international duty in the case of Calmac, things like this. There's got to be times where you look at a different position Celtic set up in with a team that might look a wee bit different. The formation might look a bit different without Calmac in it. But again, it's got to be something that preserves his career as well, because undeniably, whether he's been a wee bit hot and cold, shall we say, this season or not, he's as crucial as they come in the Celtic squad, right? So let's get the best out of him by managing his game time better. I do think there will be points in time this season where you will maybe be surprised because we're not used to it, but Calmac won't be in the starting lineup. That's not us chasing him out the team. That's for games where we think we can win with other players involved. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Daizen Maeda gets the third, Terry. A thing of absolute beauty. He'd put in one hell of a shift again today. I think we're looking at, someone Brendan has definitely hung his hat on this year as being part of everything that Celtic want to do going forward. He is a mainstay in that team now. Last year, there was plenty of debate. What's the best front 3? Some had Maeda in it, some didn't. This year, he is, I think, behind Kyogo, the second pick attacker. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I actually think, to be honest with you, the third choice one, whether it was Forrest today, whether it was Palma, whether it was Yang, I think there's much of a muchness there, if I'm brutally honest, Terry. Not to be negative, though, let's focus back on Maeda. His work rate is sensational. He's shown now he can do it for the 90 minutes as well. There's no let off from him. He's tracking back. Sutton described him as the best. What did he say? The best at closing down a player in the world. That's what he described it as today. To be honest, he's probably right, because nobody's got the legs that
Is
Mind
that a
compliment?
Is that a compliment?
Well, going forward, he still manages to amaze time and time again, Terry, doesn't he? Because he can do things like the assist off his arse for Matt O'Reilly's goal. What's he doing? Why is he turning his back on the ball?
That's just the enigma that he is. He should have been tapping that in. He should have been tapping that into the net. And the one that he scored, he should have been putting in Rose's head. Do you know what I mean?
No, this is what I'm getting to. He gets the 1-on-1 where I know it's a good save for the goalkeeper, but again, I just feel there's a split second he hesitates. Not sure, and that's why the keeper can carry on his rushing out movement, because you've dithered, even for a second, he's not had a clear mind as to what to do. See if you just make a decision early. Ball's coming across, I'm going to take a touch to the right and I'll tap it in an empty net. Take a strong first touch. He doesn't know. He opens his body up as if he's going to curl it right. He then kind of tries a half-arse lifting effort. The goalie's closed down the space and he saves it, no problem. Then you get to this goal at the end and you're getting Easter Road vibes where he scored that absolute screamer with his right foot, that one was. This one's with his left foot. Terry, where's he pulling this from? As you say, an enigma. I called him last season a Rubik's Cube of a player. That's pretty much what he's like, isn't it?
Aye, he's unreal. It's unreal. I was interested to see, because obviously the Japanese players, the players from the J League and Asia, I suppose, were brought in, probably is the best word to use, by the previous manager. And I always thought it was going to be interesting to see how those guys performed under the new manager with the old manager gone, because I think it's very, very, very unlikely that we would have had that influx of players without having Ange Postecoglou in charge of the team. And then there became this narrative, well, those players only came here because of Ange. Now that Ange is gone, they'll want to move on or they'll want to go. And we very, very quickly then seen two of those players commit to new deals whenever they already had quite a bit of time on their existing deal. There is obviously the Hatate scenario, which feels as if something was happening, then it didn't happen, but there's now still a deal to be done there, should both parties agree on it. Some of the other players, I think, have already fallen by the wayside, but they would have fallen by the wayside anyway. The likes of Kobayashi, I don't think it would have mattered if it wouldn't matter who the manager was. I think he's Ideguchi Mark II. I think Kwon will be Ideguchi Mark III. Do you know what I mean? And Iwata's probably one that is just right on the line, whether he becomes Ideguchi Mark IV or he becomes one who stays and makes a contribution.
He got game time today, Terry. He got game time
today in his proper position.
Aye, but because they're panicking about Nat Phillips' fitness for 2 weeks because of the obviously like the Elka red card. That's why I think that's why, because he's went from not playing a minute for us this season competitively, obviously as an emergency sub because we've had the Lagerbielka sending off midweek. Then Brendan's straight away went, he needs more game time now, because in 2 weeks' time, that tells me Nat Phillips is touch and go for 2 weeks. That's why I think of that, because how is he now elevated in the queue?
Has to be touch and go. I was kind of hoping he'd have been back today. So you have one game left between today and the Lazio match. If Nat Phillips doesn't play in the league game next weekend, do you throw him in against Lazio? I think this game coming up against Lazio, I think it makes make or break our participation in the Champions League this season. I really do. I don't think the defeat the other night was the end of the world. The other game finishing a draw. Again, I said this on the Thursday night show. We could end up sitting in second place after the game against Lazio if results work out, and all of a sudden you're going, actually we're in second place now. We need to beat Lazio at home. I think that is potentially our best chance of 3 points in the entire group. I think Feyenoord will also have a chance, but because that's the last game, that could potentially be a dead rubber.
I agree.
If we're good, what I would settle for now, Bhoycie, is if we're going into that Feyenoord game and we know a win will extend our participation in Europe beyond Christmas, that's probably a scenario that I would accept at this stage. And I think for that to be the case, we need to beat Lazio at home. If we beat Lazio at home, there will definitely be something riding on the Feyenoord game come the end of the group. But what's that back four going to look like? It's already been exhausted to the point where we're looking at a back four that would have been unimaginable.
I agree.
Unimaginable. We're now in a position where we're crying out for Nat Phillips to be fit. Nat Phillips, who we don't even know if he's any good or not, because we've only seen him for 45 minutes. But the alternatives are what?
What did you make of the decision then to play Lagerbielke for the start today? Not to punish him for the red card that he got, but with that game that has such importance in 2 weeks' time. If you're unsure about where Nat Phillips is right now in terms of fitness, you're then considering Iwata might play. I believe that's why he was a sub that was brought on so early. I think it was to get minutes, and he's like, I know it was in a different position, but I think he's went game time now. He needs a bit of fluidity in the team now
because
he hadn't been used before.
Home had been the player coming on for the last half hour most games.
Exactly. So I don't think he's punished.
Did he get punished? Did he get punished then?
Well, I don't know. Oh, maybe. And to be honest, I wouldn't say that would have been unfair because it was ridiculous what he did. But notwithstanding that, then I'm beginning to think, could Iwata have started today alongside Scales? Or would that have been potentially, I'll say this in inverted commas, too much of a risk? Whereas I look at Lagerbielke again today, I'm not going to bash him. I'm going to give honest opinion. He gives me the fear. It's the truth, Terry. I feel at times his passing can be lackadaisical. Sutton kept talking about today, and I always listen to Sutton because I think Sutton was a fine footballer in the sense that he played 3 different positions for Celtic. That's because he had such awareness of what was going around him. He spied it. He went, this guy doesn't look over his shoulder. He's not aware of potential danger. Anything that's not in front of him, he doesn't seem to be picking up. I think Lagerbielke, again today, he comes away with a clean sheet. It's a tick, mate. It's a tick. And that could be the positive spin you put on it. But I'm not convinced by him either. I wonder if, as you rightfully say, if it's not Nat Phillips, you think that could cost us big time if he's not fit. With that in mind, is it maybe a benefit that Lagerbielke not playing against Lazio isn't even an option? I'm beginning to go down that path, mate, but I just think right now it's been too much too soon. This is not how he was meant to be blended in the team, bear in mind. This was not part of the plan that he was starting game in, week out. I think we looked at the Ibrox display. I know the one that he got away with or didn't get away with, whatever way you look at it. But other than that, he did also have ropey moments. He was ropey midweek. And today, he didn't fill me with much confidence either, if I'm honest. I don't know. Is it Iwata the answer though either? Probably not. I'm probably with you. I think that
none
we
of
need to try and hope
players
Nat
are going to
Phillips
be
is
back.
fit.
None of the players who the longer term injuries are going to be back. Your Welsh, your Carter Vickers, Nawrowski's not even registered.
Nawrowski, yep.
So none of those guys are. It's either going to be Nat Phillips or it's going to be makeshift. It's going to be Iwata or Alistair Johnson or something like that. So again, we're hanging our hat on Nat Phillips being fit. We don't even know if Nat Phillips is. We don't even know what kind of player he is because we haven't seen him. He's at 45 minutes. I thought he looked okay, but he did look like someone who hadn't played football for quite a length of time. And again,
AGST Tech comes in, Terry. He says Lager's been pitched in at the deep end and he's been impressed. Now, I agree he's been pitched in at the deep end. I'm not sure what you're... I've not been impressed, though. I think he's been thrown in at the deep end, and I think that's what I would say would cover for him right now, in the sense that this probably wasn't part of the plan of his development at Celtic. I don't know how anyone's been impressed, though. AGSC, it's always a pleasure to have you on the bus, and I like to bring up different points of view. Terry, have you been impressed at all by Lagerbielke?
I thought he had a good 45 last weekend when he came on. When he came on for Phillips, I thought he had a good 45 there. However, I thought he was an accident waiting to happen at Ibrox. I thought he's done some stuff where you definitely can see that there's something there for the club to
You're
work
already
on.
talking, though, like you're trying to find a way around it. Do you know what I mean? I think to say you've been impressed is
No, but I
reach.
also don't think I've seen enough for me to say that he's a lost cause yet. Whereas I have seen enough.
But there's a middle ground.
To say he's a lost cause.
Yeah, that's true. There's a middle ground.
Or Quan. I've seen 20 minutes of Quan, and I've seen enough to say he's a lost cause.
Fuck.
So I don't think he's a lost cause.
I agree with that.
I think we do have to remember he's come in as somebody that we were going to look to develop, and all of a sudden he became the senior member of a defensive unit of him and Liam Scales, where Liam Scales was the absolute last-ditch option that we were prepared to throw in against anybody. But no, I'll answer your question. I've not been impressed. I've not been impressed so far.
I think that's fair, and it's not because we're trying to be bitches or that. It's just, have you been impressed?
I like the centre halves. Do you know what? I like my centre halves, and I know I stuck the bit into him so much, but I haven't seen anything from any of our new centre halves that make me think any of them is better than Starfelt. And I didn't think Starfelt was good enough.
You hate Starfelt, mate. I think Rocky will be the number one. I think I've got a lot of faith in Big Rocky.
We've not seen enough. We've not seen enough.
Good name too. No, I'm going to say I've been impressed by him. I'm just going to say I've been impressed just to be awkward. Right. Okay. We win 3-0, Terry. Let's talk about the manager. The manager absolutely has pulled out a result totally that we don't expect when we go to the Spaghetti Had. In theory, but in terms you look at budgets, you look at, size of club, etc. 7,000 Celtic fans in there. But it's never been a walk in the park. These things don't seem to have mattered much over years. Time tells us that. Results tell us that. Today, though, we watched a manager from the get-go who seemed to know exactly what the game plan should look like, how we're going to set up. It's not always the most endearing game. But we said this loads of times toward the end of last season, mate. In the last third, I would describe, of Angie's second year. We came on here routine. It became a routine. P.M.P wrote itself. The script was already there for us. We get the job done. We know how to win. Brendan's coming with a massive... He's here without this big PR machine of good love that Ange seems to bring wherever he goes. And a lot of that's down to how good Ange is with the media and things. But he definitely is being guided, I think, by a PR team that are getting him gigs left, right and centre. And I like to contrast and compare it because Brendan right now, I described when we drew 0-0 with St Johnstone, looked a bit isolated, a wee bit of a lonely figure, and someone who was on the receiving end of a hell of a lot of abuse from the stands. When you remember at full time, and they all go around, do the wee clap, and he was getting absolute pelters, and he cast a lonely figure at that point in time to me. He's letting the results do the talking for him. I know the midweek one was a disappointment. I don't square that on Brendan's shoulders. I think the squad he had to compete for the game, match day 1 of the Champions League, wasn't good enough. And we were found out with inexperienced players making inexperienced decisions. I think that's par for the course. When that's the tools that you've got to operate with. Don't put that on the manager. Results like today, when you're down for 10 men, and genuinely, without trying to sound cheesy, I forgot we had 10 men at times in the second half, Terry. That's how well our game management was. As I said, with the in-game management, he'd already had a tactical decision. But not just that. Celtic's performance level in the second half wasn't befitting of a 10-man team. We were an 11-man team, it felt like, against Livy in that second half. If you just joined in, you started watching it from 50 minutes onwards, for example, and you didn't know we were down to 10 men, it would have took you a while to clock that we were, wait now, are we a man down? You wouldn't have just clicked on that straight away. That's credit to the manager. We then see a moment with him after the game, and this is what I love about Brendan. The virtue signalling you see from across the city by the likes of Mickey Beale is left, right and centre. It knows no bounds. He does it, though, preempting potentially negative results to try and curry favour. Brendan seems to do these, if you want to call it virtue signalling acts, after results have been done, after he's dictated outcomes. And again today, he dictated an outcome, a 3-0 win against Livy away. Absolutely fantastic to see. Young fan comes on the park, 2 stewards, I don't know if you've seen the clip, 2 stewards are trying to almost huckle him. Brendan just pushes one of them away, arm round him. Green Brigade slightly to the right. He takes them to the fan base to the left, but he gives the fist pump. Brendan's beginning to find his poise a wee bit here, find his swagger again, and wee moments like that, but then they might sound trivial. I think on the back of a 3-0 win, they compound it. They're more compounded by doing that, I think, after a win. And then suddenly Brendan's beginning to look a wee bit more like the Brendan of old.
Yeah, he needs to push his chest out. He's been a wee bit subdued, Bhoycie.
I agree. I agree.
That's fair to say. He's been a wee bit subdued. I don't know what the reason for that is. Is it he feels a little bit sheepish coming back after the way he left? I thought it was ballsy of him to come back when he did.
I agree.
Because he knew that he wasn't going to be universally accepted, certainly at the outset. And he made reference to that, and he also made the quote about let's see how you feel come next May and stuff like that. I thought it was very, very ballsy of him. I didn't think Brendan Rodgers would have come back because I wasn't sure that he would have the stomach for people who potentially didn't show him the love. But
I knew he'd come back one day. I just didn't think it'd be this soon.
Yeah, no, I didn't think it would be now. And I didn't think it would be when he could his stock, despite how things ended up at Leicester, his stock was still, he had enough credit in the bank that he would still have been able to get a mid-table English Premiership job. I've no doubt about that. He also would have got options for lucrative moves to Saudi Arabia, which he's already alluded to that they were on the table as well. So I didn't expect him to come back at this exact time, but he has done. But I do feel he has been, for whatever reason, a little bit subdued. And I just want him, the same way as the team, I hope today's a catalyst for him to now push his chest out, shine the Gucci belt up, let us all see it, and for him to sort of strut his stuff a little bit like Matt O'Reilly's been doing as well. Because Rodgers is a confident manager, and he is an egotist, and he is very much around the image, what he looks like, how he's perceived. And I think he's got gears to go through. And you said there about the other night not being on him. I don't feel we've brought in a better level of player for us to do more in Europe than we have done in the last few seasons. But I think the expectation is that this manager will make up some of that difference. And I think he will be judged in this European group. And I think he needs to be the difference, because we don't have the players where our starting 11 is not as good as it was last season. We have lost Jota, we haven't brought anyone in who has shown me they're at his level. Starfelt, who I was very, very critical of, I don't know that we've brought in anyone who is at his level. We certainly haven't brought in players who are better. We haven't brought in players who are better. I think the manager needs to be the person who bridges that gap. Discuss.
He did today. And
today's Livingston. Today's Livingston, and I know
it's not easy. As well, he did it away at Ibrox as well.
He did.
He did it with 10 men at Livingston. I think you're finding so many points.
We've talked so many times about, and I'm a couple of days ago, I was almost in the camp where I was saying things like, the club don't care about Champions League. I'm going to stop caring about it. But that's wore off quite quickly. And I'm already thinking about Lazio, and I'm already seeing this as an opportunity for us to get involved in this group. And I'll probably be sitting here in 10 days' time again going, fucking, I don't care about Europe and stuff anymore. But I see this as an opportunity for us in this game. And I think the manager can make the difference. I just want to see him push on from today. And
would you not think the actions that he did at full time, do you not think that is somewhat
very classy?
It's classy, but it's also it's very good at getting fans on side. And again, a ballsy move. Again, it's one where it's going, that's fans. A lot of those from that area of the ground that go to the away games, let's be real here, as from that section that were giving them all the boos and the sort of vitriolic response after the 0-0 draw with St Johnstone, a lot of that fan base around behind that goal make up that same section that we're doing the boos today. And he's right over a bit of defiance. And I always feel that
opportunistic. Something has just happened, and he's reacted to it.
Nothing wrong with that, but I also think that shows that defiance. I think you kind of need that. I think you need that defiance. Sometimes managers work at their very best just with that wee bit of a chip on their shoulder. I think Brendan showed there was a wee bit of, I'm not fucking scared. I'll walk right up there with a fan doing a great gesture. Darren boo me now, 3-0 away at Livy, and watch you clap. Watch them, and he'll just start getting them back into the palm of that hand. That's his aim game. He'll get the fan base back in the palm, and that will work. That's what you need. He spoke about it his first time around. The Holy Trinity he spoke about. You absolutely need it. And I don't care whether it's virtue signaling or not. What he did today was a good gesture, but it was done with defiance, bravery to go to, I think, at a large part, the same section of fans that were booing him and telling him F off in 0-0 with St Johnstone. I think these are good signs from the manager. I think that is what you need him to have, that attitude.
Just around that, Bhoycie, as well, do you not find it very, very strange that today was like a home game in terms of the crowd? Three-quarters of the stadium.
A ticket.
Three-quarters of a stadium. Just talk me. I didn't actually realise. So just talk me around. How long has that been happening where we've been getting that allocation?
For Livingston, good 4 or 5 years, I would say.
And is that simply because they can't sell them to home supporters, so they made a decision?
So Livy don't section off. They just make it open season for the tickets. So they're more than happy to get the gate revenue. Other clubs' fans have said that puts their team at a disadvantage, and the board have, whether rightly or wrongly, pandered to that.
So they'd rather sit in an empty stadium. Yeah, I get it.
I think when you actually look at the product today, if you were an English football fan that just has Sky Sports subscription, there's no other game on, I'll check what's on Sky Sports Football today, and you turn that on, that might be one of the smaller grounds in the SPFL, but didn't it look like an advert for the league far more than... It does look better, doesn't it?
Better spectacle, but I also do think it does give us a better chance of getting a result on the park. Genuinely does. You couldn't hear anything, only Celtic supporters today.
That's true. I suppose that's what keeps clubs like Livy financially astute. I suppose with other clubs that have got bigger aspirations, the fans have bigger aspirations. I bet they'll both do it. You know, I bet they submit the ticket allocation to Celtic like that, going, I can't believe we're doing this. With clubs like Hearts, I get it. They'll sell out the other ones and there'll still be a sellout. That's fair enough. Hibs, maybe. Aberdeen, I'm a bit ropey on. But I think other teams like Motherwell, when they do it and things, no disrespect them, but I just go, look at it. It looks shit. I mean, it doesn't sell the game well at all. Those seats could be taken. They could be taken by a lot of Celtic fans. But that's the way it is. Brown Warrior says the songbook, though, was horrendous for the bulk of it, if the truth is told. I don't really get into that. I think folk sing the songs that... if these people want to go there and sing the songs that they do, Terry, it's their gift to do. So they paid the ticket money. If that's what they go to watch the football for, who am I to question that when I sit and watch it on a telly? It's not my style. And whether the songbook is approved of by the likes of Brown Warrior or whether it's not, there is a massive percentage of Celtic fans who want to sing it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be singing it. And I think that's about as sitting on the fence as I can do on that one, to be completely honest with you. Carousel, I noticed earlier as well, Brendan saving the wee boy, you know, the wee push away. We like that. Monty was delighted for Maeda getting a quite outstanding goal. No player on our side works as hard for the team. And I think that is one thing Brendan's trying to get across right now. The team's united, Terry. He's pushing that narrative a wee bit right now. The team is united. Even the media are picking up on it. They look like a group now that are working together. Things like this, that's going to be essential for the Champions League in a few weeks' time as well. We won't get there just on players' individual qualities, Terry. It will need to be a team that is fighting for each other and in this together with the manager at the helm, that they're buying into and believing in. I think we're beginning to see that is the case now. Would that be fair?
I think slowly, Bhoycie, slowly. I think today was definitely the best performance that we've had this season, and the second half last week was probably our best spell prior to today. So I think we are starting to go through the gears. Be interesting once we get everybody back. And I know that yourself and Mark had a really interesting conversation where during the week, well, we're not actually missing loads and loads of players. We're just missing loads of centre backs. But can you imagine?
True.
Can you imagine then if we parachute Carter Vickers back into this team again, and if Nawrocki is the Starfelt replacement and he is a level above Lagerbilge and Scales, if those two players come back into that side, all of a sudden that team feels a lot stronger. There could also be a centre-back pairing, and again, we don't know what Nat Phillips brings, but there could be a centre-back pairing of Nat Phillips and Carter Vickers. If that took off, could we be in a position where we try to keep this guy beyond January? Is there even a chance that Nat Phillips could be somebody that we would sign? Whenever we signed him, I thought, the point I made was, we'll bring somebody in here who's got Champions League experience, which is different from the profile of player that we've already signed. So if Nat Phillips is of a higher level, then why weren't we not going for Nat Phillips at the start of the window instead of bringing him in as a last couple of days cover option?
Terry,
why was that not the type of player we were looking for?
I think you raise a brilliant point. And this is what really frustrates me. I think for every Lagerbielke, there should still be someone who comes in oven ready. That's the term I like to use. Celtic now seem to have went, we've had a bit of success at project players. Why don't we just always, every window, just sign guys that might make an impact that are low cost? There doesn't seem to be a balance now in what the transfer model looks like, Terry. There's none that, and that's where my frustration probably lies the most, is that we just seem to be like, oh, that seemed to work. Right, we'll just double down on that profile then, and we'll just bring in every player as a project player. I think you're right. There was a Nat Phillips available 3 months before that we got him. Why couldn't Nat Phillips and a Lagerbielke, or a Nat Phillips and a Rocky be your two centre backs? Albeit the two pair, the pair of them would have been injured and on the sidelines, but that's just bad luck. I think from a transfer recruitment point of view, I think you're right. We should be looking at our Nat Phillips. For every Nat Phillips, there's a Lagerbielke or a Rocky. For every Rocky, there's a Nat Phillips. That sort of balance makes more sense to me, Terry Pal. For every Greg Taylor in the squad, there's a better left back or a more oven-ready first team left back brought in to compete with Taylor. If Taylor wins the battle, fair enough. It's quite obvious Bernabe was never going to be ready to compete with Greg Taylor in any contest for any
was
type
he
of
on the bench? Was he on the bench today? I didn't see the full bench. No, he's gone. He's done. I think he's done.
Yeah, he'll never make it. And that's, again, with your Brendan and you're looking at the squad spending this year, that's 3.75 million that Andrews afforded last year, or whoever's above Ange, to bring in. Who is bringing in the players, Terry? Is it Mark Lawwell? Is it Mark Nicholson? Is it Peter Lawwell who's involved in the strategy? Which one is it that's doing it? Brendan accepts that he's just part of the process. If you go by his words, he gets some sort of final yay or nay. I doubt that I believe Brendan, to be honest with you on that. I think what Brendan's doing is I give him a final year and once I see them in training. See Quan as an example. Right, no worries. You got to bring me in these guys. I'm not going to argue the same way I did last time around, but I ain't going to be forced to play these pricks. And I think when it comes to like the Quan who comes in, well, Quan I call a prick because obviously he was quoted, whether it's a misquote or whether it's not, whether it's a language barrier. The quote was there, put in black and white and never denied by anyone. He thought he would come in and be the best player in the country. Let's set you off on a bad footing. You watched him, Brendan watched him in that friendly or that testimonial, James Ford testimony. He went, oh, fuck this. He'll not play. Is that what Brendan Hussey say? Is it not so much that maybe they're coming in, whether he likes it or not, but Brendan say is actually, but I won't be playing them if I don't rate them.
Bernabe wasn't on the bench today, so I think that's very, very telling because obviously he had the alarm clock issue, and the manager then seemed to embrace him back in after that again. But he hasn't been anywhere to be seen over the last three lineups. I know he wasn't registered for Europe, but again, there's that in itself is very damning as well. That you've brought in a player for close to £4 million and he can't even get into your your Champions League squad. Champions League squad is an interesting one, Bhoycie, because we have to have so many homegrown players, Scottish players.
Homegrown or Celtic trained.
Yeah. And when we look at some of the names that are in that squad, they are not players that you would want to be bringing on in any Champions League game. And you'll know this from playing the old Championship Manager and stuff like that. If you don't have the homegrown players, you just leave an empty position because you can't bring in somebody who's not. Are we in a position where we're thinking about having these homegrown players, but if you ever actually had to use some of these guys in a Champions League game, they would give you the fear? Do we need to start thinking about how we can raise the level of the homegrown players that we have for that competition? And have we missed a trick by allowing guys like Hickey, Doig, maybe to a lesser extent Lewis Ferguson, guys like this who would have been possibly, we looked at those guys as not being good enough to go straight into our first team, but out of the Scottish players that are available to us, those three names, definitely Hickey, possibly Doig and Ferguson, would probably have, the optics would be, they would be of a better level than some of the guys that were registering for this competition just because of their nationality. And again, I'm looking at Burnaby. Yeah. I'm looking at Burnaby. Could we not have got a homegrown player who's at least as good as him? Kobayashi? Could we? I mean, I'm just going to throw a name out there.
Okay.
Porteous. Is Porteous any worse than Kobayashi? Porteous is now Scotland international. Nisbet. Is O better than Nisbet?
I think these are fair conversations. I think Ange was, to quote Lenny again, bitterly disappointed in the standard of the SPFL, but maybe just a wee bit ignorant to it as well, what was under him, because he didn't know the market as well, and he thought, well, I'm not going to be here long. I ain't fucking investing my time. I'm going to go for players from a market that I know, and I'll take the misses because the hits will be hits, and the ones that maybe don't adapt as well over here will be.
Is Quan better than Lewis Ferguson?
Softened. I mean, fuck no. I mean, no way. And I think when you look back through time, Celtic's always had players throughout its, its history. I always look at my Celtic sporting history because I can give a better verdict on that. It's always had players that have came from the league that might seem unfashionable. Now there seems to be a snobbery also from our fan base. I just think that sometimes that seems to be, no way. Because I watched Aberdeen against Frankfurt Thursday, particularly first half. I looked at the boy up front. His name's escaping me, Terry.
For Aberdeen, the main striker.
Yeah. Not Jake, the other one. Mayovsky. I was so impressed with him, and I thought, I don't get how he couldn't be coming in to be, if we're not going to sign one, because there's no value in it, because Kyogo's the main man, I don't get how 2 million quid on him would be a bad investment as another option. I don't see why it's a bad investment. I don't get it. When I looked at what he did against proper opposition there, by the way, proper opposition in Frankfurt, Europa League winners, no less, only the other year. I liked what I seen from him, and I thought, I watched how they were setting up. I looked how Aberdeen played. I loved their shape off the ball. I thought that was very, very defined in exactly what they were trying to do, what the message was from the manager. So kudos to him as well. Against a far a team with greater resources, far way ahead of Aberdeen in terms of personnel. But I liked what I seen. I just think these are the sort of games you should be then. Stop being ignorant to the league that they play in. You're now seeing them tested against better players, and surely then you could cherry pick one or two, or even one on a good day, and you go, yeah, do you know what? He would have done a job for us as a squad player. Celtic are crying out for a third striker. Whether he becomes second choice ahead of O, I don't think that'd be the hardest task. I don't think O will prove to be a Brendan player. I don't think O is a Celtic player so far. But if he's needing more time to develop, Celtic's cause is always the immediate future. And that means Celtic, whether O's taking more time to settle, doesn't mean you're writing him off as such. I would say then, why not have someone who might be able to make an impact quicker? someone who's played in Scotland for the last year, that's had an impact, affected outcomes, been part of a third placed Aberdeen, that is now showing in Europe. He looks a decent player. That was on your doorstep. If Celtic closed the door domestically, Terry, on where they shop, I think that's what you're getting at. And I think maybe there is an aspect to that.
Yeah, I'm not getting at that necessarily, but I think it is a good point, because when I remember when I first started supporting Celtic, if there was a good player at another team who was scoring goals or doing really well, Celtic or Rangers would have went and got them. There was always a bump fight between the two. I'm thinking back to people like Celtic took Joe Miller from Aberdeen because he was good at Aberdeen, and Tommy
Phil O'Donnell.
Phil O'Donnell. The list goes
John
on.
Collins.
And on. But yeah, John Collins, a really good
Scott
example.
Brown.
What the point I was making was, we have to have 8 Scottish players in our Champions League squad. Do we look to go out and make sure that those 8 Scottish players that we have to have are the best that we can possibly get, and not just names on a sheet because they've got the saltire on their birth certificate? Are we missing a trick by allowing some of these kids who have gone to play in Serie A and done really well, and in some cases earned moves to the Premiership? Should we not have had some kind of focus on, let's get the best crop of homegrown players that we can possibly get for that coefficient, rather than just have 8 birth certificates that say Scotland on them? That's the point where I was going as well. The other part then about, have we stopped signing players from the SPL? Well, 3 million for Turnbull is probably the last one that we've brought in, isn't it? I can't think of anybody since Turnbull that we've brought in.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe changed people's perception of what value you can get in it. I mean, again, you look at players that would have qualified. I mean, Scott McDonald would have, because he had Scots in his genes, and he'd started at Motherwell. Remember Scott McDonald? No, I remember him.
You said he had Scott in his genes. He'd Scott in his name.
Aye, Scott in his name and his genes. He was Scottish. He was half Scottish, I'm sure. Guys like Paul Hartley affected outcomes in Europe. Barry Robson.
Do you remember Hartley and Robson together?
Barry Caldwell.
He kept Brown out of the team. Hartley and Robson put Brown out of the team for a spell.
That's right. And Donati, the most capped Italian under 21 of all time. Massimo Donati cost AC Milan £10 million.
Hickey annoys me, Bhoycie. I think Hickey.
Yeah. He was at Celtic, wasn't he?
He was at Celtic, but we could have got him when he was at Hearts. We definitely could. Yes. Do you remember the game? Do you remember the cup game? It was Karamoko was directly up against Hickey. I think one of them was 16 and the other one was 11 or something. And they were playing each other. And I just liked what I seen from Hickey at that really early stage. And I think now you can see he's a Scotland international. How we weren't in that discussion, if we weren't, I just don't understand. I don't know. Doig, I struggle to see how someone could have felt Doig wasn't a safer option than Burnaby. Someone who's already played in the SPL, he looks really exciting. Or we bring in somebody that we could not possibly know anything about, his personality, his traits. I don't know how that transfer happens where we end up with Burnaby. How much do we know about that player before we've brought him in? Whereas players who are closer to home, you'll be able to hear things through the grapevine about what kind of personality they have and that kind of thing. Hickey is one we should have had. Just when we're on that though, what about wee Karamoko? Do you know where he's at now?
Blackpool.
This was the kid
that went to Brest, didn't he?
He went to France. This was the kid every team in Europe wanted to sign. This was the kid that was going to be the golden ticket for Celtic. And when we lost him for nothing, I was thinking, what have we done here? But when you hear that he's rocking up at Blackpool now, it just hasn't happened for the last. It's looking like it, Bhoycie, at this stage. It's looking like it. It just shows you.
It's interesting as well. Brendan didn't give him that game time that people are crying out for.
None of them.
But Brendan in particular, I think there was a massive call for Brendan to be integrating him more into the team. There's a reason that Rodgers didn't, isn't there? There's a reason. It's got to be.
There's a reason you end up at Blackpool after being touted around as
Totally agree.
the next great thing.
RMCL says he's not even getting a game for Blackpool.
The juxtaposition of that is the young lad Doig, who's pulling up trees down there, and get a sense that
who's Doig?
He's going to be special. Not Doig.
Hickey.
What do you call it at Liverpool?
Oh, Doug.
Doug. You just get the feeling he's going to be special, and that's one that we may look back in 5 years' time going, we had that kid and we couldn't make it happen. That's one that's concerning as well. That's always in the back burner. Is again, do we look to recruit the best Scottish players that we can bring in?
We seem to have taken an eye off that.
Or do we bring through better kids? I don't see how we can keep any kid who's shown any kind of promise, because that Lowland League it's just not an option. And I felt by now the powers that be would have negotiated a pathway where that team could move up. But even having said that, it's not as if they've won that league or anything. They probably wouldn't have moved up. They probably wouldn't have moved up even if they could.
Nah, it's not pulled up.
I think the plan with that was to get to where you could bring that team right through to the Scottish Championship, and it seems to have, the progress on that seems to have halted. And I just don't know if we get any kid worth his salt, how do we keep him? I mean, Ben Doak lined up the other night in the Europa League against the Lids team from Austria, and he was playing alongside Nunez and Luis Diaz, internationals from South America.
Mm-hmm.
How does that compare against? I said it the other night, and it's not any abuse of these guys, but how does that compare to lining up against Slaney and fucking boys like that, like and Broomhill?
Yeah, the Broomhill. I know what you're saying.
There's no pathway. There's no pathway at all. There's no incentive for any kid to commit themselves to Celtic.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird.
Something has to change.
Well, Brendan spoke about it though as well, that he always wants a contingent of Scottish players in particular that's going to be in his Celtic squad. He said that. So I wonder if maybe over the space of time of the January window, his next window in the summer, if Brendan could sort of try and take the reins back a wee bit. Fuck knows putting your faith in that ever again, Bhoycie. But if we do, maybe that'll be an angle he goes in, because it will be one that's more palatable, the Bold, in terms of affordability, and definitely because there's been missed opportunities. As an example, trait of that, let's not have the next Doig or Hickey slip through our fingers when we should be, as you say, identifying them from within our league and going, we're the big fish, the big fish in this small pond. We take those best players, we go buy them, we go take them, because you can't afford to say no to our money, and the lure of Celtic is still too much. We will wait and see. Terry, it's been a good chat this afternoon. Hour and 18 minutes in. There's 171 live. Please, before you go, give us a wee like, give us a share, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, all that stuff. That's us out of here. There's no music to say hello, so I'll just let Lennon say something. See you later.